Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. You cannot talk about this philosophy without talking about the liberal arts. Today, people think liberal arts means useless degrees like philosophy or English that won't get you a job at Amazon. But the term is actually much older and deeper. Artus liberalis were the arts of the free person. In ancient Rome, there were skills you taught a slave: how to build a wall, how to farm, how to cook. These were the servile arts, mechanical arts. But the free man needed different skills. He needed to know how to speak in public, rhetoric. He needed to know how to think with numbers, logic, math. He needed to know how the stars moved, astronomy. He needed to know how to argue. The liberal philosophy today still clings to this ancient ideal. It rejects the idea that school should just be job training. If a parent walks in and says, "Why does my kid need to read poetry? He's going to be an electrician," the liberal educator replies, "He needs to read poetry because he is a human being and a citizen. He will be an electrician for 8 hours a day, but he will be a father, a neighbor, and a voter for 24 hours a day." We are educating the man, not just the worker. This is why liberal education fights so hard for the humanities. They believe that literature, history, and art are the gyms where we work out our empathy and our understanding of the human condition. Without them, we might be efficient workers, but we would be hollow people. Here is where things get messy and where a lot of people get confused. In education textbooks, you will often see liberalism and progressivism listed as separate chapters. But in the real world, they blur together. Think of them as siblings. Liberalism is the older brother. He is obsessed with rights, reason, the individual, and the law. He loves the Constitution. He loves the scientific method. Progressivism, the John Dewey crowd, is the younger sister. She is obsessed with social experience, groups, and hands-on learning. While a liberal might say, "Read this book and write an essay to develop your critical thinking," a progressive might say, "Let's go start a community garden to learn about biology and community service." Modern American education is a blend of both, but the liberal part of that blend is the part that insists on academic freedom. The teacher can teach controversial topics. Student rights, you have free speech in the hallway. Standardized expectations of fairness, the separation of church and state. If we walked into a classroom that was operating on pure liberal principles, distinct from the messy reality of most schools, what would we see? It wouldn't be as rigid as the conservative classroom, but it wouldn't be as chaotic as a radical unschooling pod. It would look like a town hall meeting. 1. The setup. The desks might be in a circle or clusters to encourage discussion. The walls would be covered with resources, maps, timelines, maybe the Bill of Rights. There would be a diverse classroom library. 2. The activity. You would see a lot of Socratic seminar. The teacher poses a hard question. Was it right for Truman to drop the atomic bomb? The teacher does not give the answer. The teacher acts as the moderator. They ensure the debate stays civil. They demand evidence. Student A: "It was wrong because it killed civilians." Teacher: "Okay, that is a moral argument. Can you back that up with a philosophical principle?" Student B: "But it saved lives by ending the war." Teacher: "That is a utilitarian argument. Does the end justify the means?" 3. The vibe. The room feels safe but intellectually dangerous. Ideas are flying around. Students are allowed to change their minds. The goal isn't to memorize a date. The goal is to develop a nuanced, defensible position. 4. The assessment. You would see essays, lots of them. The essay is the ultimate liberal assessment because it asks the individual to take a stand and defend it with reason. You would also see research papers, where students have to sift through sources and find the truth. If liberalism is so great, freedom, reason, democracy, why is it under attack from both sides? To understand the American education wars, you have to understand who hates the liberals and why. Conservatives look at the liberal school and see a moral vacuum. They argue that by being neutral and secular, the liberal school is actually destroying values. They say, "You present all these ideas as equal options: atheism, faith, capitalism, socialism." but they aren't equal. Some are true and good, and some are bad. They argue that the marketplace of ideas confuses children. Children need guidance. They need to be told what is right and wrong, not told to figure it out. By removing God and tradition from the school, conservatives argue that liberals have created a generation that believes in nothing. A generation of relativists who think truth is just whatever I feel like. They also hate the critical aspect. They say you teach students to critique their country before they even learn to love it. You are raising cynics who hate America. This is the surprise for many people. The hard left, the critical pedagogy crowd, the Marxists, hates liberalism just as much as the right does, but for the exact opposite reason. They look at the liberal school and see a mask for power. They argue that liberalism is too focused on the individual. They say it's nice to tell a poor kid that education is the great equalizer and you can be anything, but that ignores the systemic reality. That kid is going to a school with no funding, living in a neighborhood with no jobs, and facing systemic racism. The left argues that liberalism is naive. It pretends that we are all starting on a level playing field when we aren't. They say that the liberal obsession with polite debate and tolerance just protects the status quo. If you are being oppressed, you don't want a debate. You want a revolution. You don't want tolerance. You want justice. They argue that the scientific method and reason are often just Eurocentric ways of thinking that dismiss other ways of knowing. They view the liberal attempt to be colorblind or neutral as a way of ignoring the very real problems of race and power. Despite these attacks, the liberal educator stands their ground, and their defense is powerful. They will admit that the system isn't perfect. They will admit that meritocracy often fails. But they will ask, what is the alternative? If we abandon reason, what are we left with? We are left with force. We are left with might makes right. If we can't settle our differences through debate and evidence, we will settle them with fists and guns. If we abandon the individual, we are left with tribalism. We become just representatives of our race or our class, locked in eternal conflict. If we abandon the belief in universal truth and science, we are left in a world where reality is whatever the leader says it is. The liberal educator argues that the school is the last line of defense against chaos. They believe that while it is hard to be free and hard to think for yourself, it is the only way to live a dignified human life. They will tell you that the ability to read a news story and spot the lie is a superpower. They will tell you that the ability to sit in a room with someone you hate and have a conversation is the only thing keeping civil war at bay. In the end, liberalism in education is a gamble. It is a massive wager on the human spirit. It bets that the average child, if given the tools, can handle the truth. It bets that we don't need kings, priests, or dictators to tell us how to live. It bets that freedom is not just a chaotic free-for-all, but a disciplined exercise of the mind. When a teacher hands a student a banned book and says, "Read it and tell me what you think," that is an act of liberalism. When a science teacher says, "I don't care what you believe, I care what the data says," that is an act of liberalism. When a principal defends a student's right to wear a protest armband, even if the principal disagrees with the protest, that is an act of liberalism. It is the philosophy of the open hand and the open mind. It is often messy, it is often frustrating, and it is slow. It takes a long time to explain things, to debate things, and to build consensus. It would be much faster to just issue orders, but the liberal educator knows that efficiency isn't the point. The point is the soul of the student. They are trying to light a fire that will burn long after the student has left the building. The fire of a mind that is, finally and truly, free.